when people go in between lives, they can visit with their soul group or meet them per se and recognize the souls of the people that they've either been with now or potentially are going to come across.
A lot of times, if you experience something in a past life, you're going to feel it in this life in some way.
People get into the past life and what's happened to cause their fear now or their symptom now is so simple. It's so simple and it's so ordinary that I never, if someone's coming for a certain symptom, I never suggest what it could be, because often it's something that was so ordinary or normal that happened that caused it.
I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Toni Reilly. How you doing, Toni?
Hey, good, thanks, Alex.
Good. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate it. We're going to go into a deep dive into past lives, in between lives, reincarnation. It's going to be a fun show. So I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Yes, me.
So let me ask you, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background as a doctor in these? Because this is generally not something you know, is known as like a doctor of past lives and reincarnation. So can you talk a little bit about how you got to this point?
So it all began about 20 years ago when I became aware of past lives. So I was in my 30s and it seemed I had a very mainstream life before that, actually. And came to a time in my life where big changes were happening. My marriage split up. So I began soul searching, and in that soul searching phase, I became aware of my intuition, and also in that process, I became aware of past lives. I read Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, and I thought everything clicked in, and I thought, it sounds so cliche, but I thought, oh, this is what I'm here to do. And from there, I became obsessed with making this happen. So I learned to do past lives. In fact, the lady who told me to read that book taught me. She happened to be having a class a couple of days later and taught me. And I went on to train with Brian Weiss. And also people came for regression. They came. Who even knows where all these people came from? But they came, and I documented every case from the beginning. So I've got a lot of them. And just took notice of what was happening in them, and it was healing things for them. It was very fascinating for me back in the day. But even before that, actually, before I started working with people, I had my own session. And that's the clincher for me, because I don't make stuff up or fool myself. And I was on the couch with the lady who taught me, having a session, and I could see these past lives in my mind, and they were moving almost like movies. And I felt like I was there. I felt like I knew what was going on in them. And most of all, they cleared the fears, or that they cleared the things that I asked to clear. And
well, let me ask you, so when you're saying, can you explain the process of a past life regression for people who don't understand it?
Yes. So it's a beautiful thing. So basically you're guided into a relaxed state. I don't even call it hypnosis, actually. It's just you're guided into a relaxed state, usually with guided visualization, so a meditative state. And what happens is the person starts to recall themselves at another time. So what happens is they usually will see it in their third eye. Not everyone sees, but most do. So they'll have feelings as well, as in if they find themselves as a small child, their body might start to feel really small. They're just lying on the couch, but it's all the senses are working, all the sixth senses and the physical senses. So they're usually seeing, feeling and knowing what's going on in there. And when it's facilitated, the facilitator's prompting for them to respond. You can always respond. And so they'll relay back what's happening. and then the facilitator's guiding them through, usually to achieve fixing something, or at least mine was for the therapeutic value in it. Yeah.
So then let me ask you, on the more of the spiritual side of things, these memories are in our soul, if you will, or our Akashic records, as they say. So this information lives there. Are we accessing it through, what are we accessing? Because a lot of people say, oh, it's in the subconscious mind, but it can't be in the subconscious mind because it's a spiritual aspect of our soul, these other lives. So what are we accessing? And is it an open book, or do they only show you what you need to know to heal or to move on in this life?
I believe that it comes directly from our soul. And when someone comes along for regression, or they do it themselves, I believe that their soul has kind of guided them to that point so that they have something revealed to them at that very moment in their lifetime that is going to help them for now. So although it comes from the soul energy, it's always what's given or presented to make this life here now better, to fix something, to heal something, even maybe just to help people realize that there's more, and we're not just here in life as a human, that our soul energy exists. So it has many facets of why it would come to help somebody. But yes, it comes directly from the soul. And I feel like that's why it's so effective. It's why it's so effective as a therapy, or even just for people to lose the fear of death and start to really embrace life and not worry so much about things that don't matter.
Can anyone do it, or do you need to go through a kind of a practitioner?
Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it, because we're all born of our soul energy, and our soul prepared, or we agreed, what we're doing here. So we can all do it. There's some colleagues of mine even that are not fans of doing it yourself, but in my whole 20 years, it's completely fine to do it yourself. I think the thing with a facilitator is, perhaps because your energies are together and and they know what to delve for to get to the bottom of a specific issue that you might have. And also, you're not left with questions, because the facilitator will know exactly what to ask so that you get closure from it. So you can do that yourself as well. However, the facilitator is going to take any of that thinking away for you. Yeah.
So for people listening, a lot of times if you experience something in a past life, you're going to feel it in this life in some way. So if you were thrown off of a pyramid by Aztec priests and sacrificed, you might have a fear of heights.
Yes.
in this one.
Yeah.
Or if you were burned at the stake by your family because they thought you were a witch, you might have a problem expressing yourself to your family or letting people know who you really are. Is that a fair assessment?
Great assessment. Yes. And I think those are really, I guess they're wonderful assimilations for what could happen. But very often people get into the past life and what's happened to cause their fear now, or their symptom now, is so simple. It's so simple and it's so ordinary that I never, if someone's coming for a certain symptom, I never suggest what it could be, because often it's something that was so ordinary or normal that happened that caused it. But certainly with the fires and things, those are not really normal things to experience, but a lot of it happens. If people have a fear of fire or heights or flying, any of those things, something pretty wild will have happened for it to be such a fear.
Interesting. And how does it work with, or does it work in past lives that it affects your physical body? Where I've heard of scarring, I've heard of, I had one person on who was talking about a past life of theirs, and he was an Asian man in this life, but before he was like a 6'8" Scottish man fighting in on the field somewhere in a war or a battle, and he basically got axed in his shoulder, and he'd always had that shoulder had always been bad for some strange reason, like he had issues with it. Is that make sense to you in your work?
Absolutely. So scars or birthmarks even, we will always be able to trace them back to, and usually it's an injury from a past life. So certainly with the scars, they maybe don't even have to have a scar. It might just be that they have shoulder problems and Western medicine or x-rays and things cannot detect anything. So it's this mystery physical symptom. That's when it's like, that's from a past life, and you go along and you see potentially something brutal, but you see it detached, by the way. It's not scary to see what happened, but it fixes it almost like this.
Yeah, I've heard stories of like, oh, there's this big mole on the back of your head, like, and they hear like, I was shot in the back in a war, or something along those lines. These are the kind of little things that come along the way. So let me ask you, how does understanding your past life contribute to a person's self-awareness or personal growth in this lifetime?
Self-awareness, my favorite side effect of past lives. I think what it does is it helps them, aside from clearing fears or phobias or physical symptoms, it helps them understand themselves. So if we look at emotionally what it does, they'll often see a past life that is similar, or certainly it invokes the same emotions in them that they're feeling now or experiencing now. Let's think about a relationship that's trouble for them, gives them trouble. So they'll find out what happened then, what the cause of it was, and somehow it really gives them this deep understanding. And hence, when they understand themselves and why things are happening, it gives them big self-awareness. And also, of course, what we know with self-awareness is it takes away blaming other people. So no matter what you see in the past life, let's say someone's got a hard relationship and they might see themselves even potentially with the same person, but in a different, maybe different dynamics, even maybe the opposite sexes, but they see it and then they can understand why the dynamics are the way they are now, by what happened before. And it's the awareness from that. You can't go back from it. It's just amazing.
Did you have a belief in reincarnation before this?
I wouldn't say I was not a believer. I just was not aware of it. It wasn't something that I thought about or really was involved in.
Or grew up with.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something but when that information hit you, that you were like, that makes sense to me. And that's where you started to go deeper and deeper.
Yeah, when I read that book, and I suppose it's potentially seems out there, but when I read that book, it was like, oh, everything. I just knew it was real and true. So, yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit on the concept of in-between lives?
So the way I see in-between lives is the space where we're preparing to incarnate. So when people describe it there's human elements to it because we're talking about choosing, but really beyond that space, we don't have a mind. So there is no choice. It's just this beautiful everything and nothing. But in the in-between space, there's some interaction. Sometimes you see it as human-like, and sometimes it's much more energetic, color, for example. But what happens there is we're deciding what we're doing here. When we go back, as now, if we go back for a visit in between, we'll find out why we planned what we're doing now, why we have these circumstances, and what the purpose of them was. So all of the information for what we're doing here, what we've done before, and even what we'll be doing in the future is accessible there. So it's quite the, it's such a liberating and beautiful experience to get that information, because it surpasses anything that our mind could perceive. It gives us a different perception, and it's something you can't really explain without having the experience. Can't quite articulate it as it feels to be there.
So you're talking a little bit about creating your soul blueprint, if you will.
Yes, and we do that. Our life it has a blueprint, and you don't even have to go between actually to access the blueprint. There are ways that we can do that. In fact, it was one of the big bodies of work that I did from knowing that we have a blueprint and how to access it. So I made that part of my psychology. It's called Life Map. But essentially, you can, because it is predestined before we're born, of course we can access it. It's why psychics can see what's happening, or read into us, read our aura, and tell us about our attributes and our characteristics, these kinds of things. So there's and when we access it, it makes our lives make sense. It makes us make sense. It makes us more comfortable with who we are. And even with our insecurities, everything is destined. Everything is blueprinted that we do here, that we experience.
Well, what about free will then? I'll be the devil's advocate.
I love talking about free will. So will is of the mind, and the mind is only part of the human experience. So it feels like we have will here, and we do, because we do have a mind. But free will, when we feel like we have the willpower to change that blueprint, we don't actually. But part of that blueprint that we're living out will be that we think we can change it and we have control over it. We're control freaks. People, it's a symptom of having a mind, that we need to feel like we have control over what's happening. And I don't say that we don't have control so that people are apathetic, and it's not what happens. The way that we are overrides it. But what it does do, if we realize that everything is happening with purpose, everything, the good, the bad, the challenging, the wonderful, then we delve deeper for why it's happening, and actually you get less caught up in the trauma of it. So finding out why things happen, why was that part of my plan, is the way to make life much more easy.
So from my understanding, though, from people I've spoken to, in regards to the blueprint, that yes, everything is predestined. These are lessons, and they're like kind of guide markers along life's path, if you will. But the in between the guide, the big things, is where you get to wiggle a bit. And if you wiggle too far off, you will get either nudged back in, or become so unbearable going that you're like, let me just get back to where I was. Because if today I say, I'm going to go to the NBA, it's probably not going to happen. I'm not going to play in the professional basketball. I'm just not. I could start trying at my age and my height and my skill level, but chances are I'm not going to get there. Almost 110% chance I won't get there. But I have the free will to choose if I want to go down that road. So you're saying that choice that I have was kind of a predestined choice, and it's an illusion, that free will. So that's your point of view, which differs from many other people's point of view.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, I call it the unpopular truths, or one of them, about incarnating, is that people feel like they're off path. Oh, I've gone off path. And that's because life got tough. It didn't go the way that you wanted. Or and the natural the natural thing is we did the wrong thing. That's how come we ended up over there. But actually, the experience of life is it's not a bed of roses and it's not a straight path. It's the wiggles in that path are destined. And I think realizing that you didn't go off path, but it was part of the journey, if you like, it's actually liberating. Because in one way, what you're doing when you say you've gone off path is you're blaming yourself. I'm so bad. I'm so silly. I did the wrong thing. But it's like, no, you didn't. It was, you were to have that experience. And I think, I mean, so many terrible things happen that when they happen, people can't perceive that that could possibly be planned or that one would agree to it. So you can understand where the resistance for that they didn't go off path and that it was actually meant to happen is hard to take. But it's truly part of it. And I think the other thing that people like to tell themselves is this person went off path and it's because they don't like where they went. For example, someone left them and they loved them so much.
Right.
And it's like, it's so much easier to say, well, they've gone off path, but they didn't. It's all, we always have to bring it back to why did our life go there? And then, to be honest, it doesn't come to you like that until you're back usually. So hindsight is the big harbinger of knowledge, of wisdom, actually. That's when we go, oh, okay, I get why I ended up there and had to, scramble back. So
yeah, I see where why I lost that job, or I broke up with that person. Thank God I broke up with that person. Thank God I lost that job. Yeah, yes, wisdom is painful.
It's so painful. It's so painful. Yeah.
Now, what are some of the common themes and patterns you see in past life regressions?
Gosh, the first one that comes to me when you ask that is loneliness. Loneliness. People who feel lonely or alone in life, they might, when they come for a session, what they might be shown is several lifetimes where they felt alone or they literally been alone. So loneliness is a thing, a pattern. You see a lot around abandonment and a lot around but rejection as well. They're two different things, and being betrayed, things that they're the same things that invoke insecurity and emotional turmoil in us in life. You'll see these same patterns in the past lives. I think that the past lives they're very literal, and the assimilation that's made for people and patterns that they're shown are the same things that are happening now. So throughout life, since we were a caveman, they go back to those times as well sometimes. Since then, it was all about the emotion that the person felt. Were they afraid? Were they not feeling good enough? They weren't a very good hunter, for example. And then they can't provide for their family, which might be a tiny family. So yeah, the emotions are always the point of it's how we fix things, acknowledging the emotion that was felt. So the patterns are always around that. And gosh, what other patterns do I see? There's many, but I really would say that commonly they're going to be loneliness, abandonment, rejection, betrayal. Yeah.
Why, when the concept of past lives came into the zeitgeist, which was really, if I remember correctly, I mean, many lives, many mansions, which was a seminal book, but it wasn't Harry Potter. Not everybody was reading that book. So it was a very specific group of people that were ready for that information. The first time I remember hearing it was Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah.
In the 80s, when she came out with her memoir about her past lives, and everyone thought she was absolutely loony and crazy. But she was, she's an underappreciated person who came out and really brought a lot of these ideas into the Western world back in the 80s as well. But why is it that then the jokes started happening? Well, oh, you lived in a past life, you were Napoleon, or you were Caesar, or you were Cleopatra, or you're like, everyone always was super famous in their past lives. Have you come across anything like that? Because like you said, most people are not going to be the king. They're probably going to be the guy or the gal in the kitchen.
That is true. That is true. And I mean,
just by mathematics,
the ratio of people who are celebrity now, it's the same. Right. There's a tiny portion of them. So within the people who recall past lives, I think that whole famous thing is just people's resistance to the possibility that this is a thing. And of course, I think people just copy what other people said when they don't actually know. So it's really easy to say, oh, everyone was famous in a past life. Of course they're not. But there has to be people who were that person or who lived as the person or people that were in authority or famous. So it's not out of the realms. I never like to discount what people say. If they genuinely have recalled something, then I would take it on board. But as a facilitator, there's things that you can ask to determine, are you really that person? Or you might be the maid actually. So, but we can determine all of these things in the session. But the famous people, there's lots of people who claim to be, and I mean, I don't want to undermine them because someone was those people. For me, I think one of my most exciting, I personally find this exciting because it ticks all the boxes of skeptics, in that a friend of mine's husband who was disinterested in past lives and very very successful actually in his life, but not interested in past lives, but she was, and he humored her, if you like, oh yeah, I'll have a session. Well, he was so incredible, and this is often what happens. He was textbook in that he immediately was in there. He's recalling what's happening because he was skeptical in the first place. And that semi remains even when you're in your past life. You can still question what's going on. And he was like, really? But he's recounting all of this information to me. And it was so exciting in that it was medieval and he had killed a king. Well, he came out of it, and all of the information that he recalled and the timelines, because you can go backwards and forwards within the life, they made sense. And I'd heard many thousands of things like this before, but we just went through it and off he went. And later that night, he's researching on Google and he's like, what? These things that he had recalled, which seemed to be like totally unbelievable. And he was not into history or anything. It was written. It was there, documented. And he's like, this is the uniforms that he'd seen. So if you Google, well, we have that now. It wasn't always there. And people can go on Google, but this story was there. And it was exciting because I think there was a whole lot of within history. They didn't know who killed that king. It was written. They didn't know. It was never found out. And he'd said all these things in his regression. I adored that. But I mean, he wasn't the king, but certainly up there.
So let me ask you then, what is the most surprising case that you can recall of a past life regression that you were just completely blown out of the water by it?
I'm thinking at this trajectory, that one is the most exciting for me. There's
Really?
I think because I personally am fascinated with those eras as well. But oh, you cannot believe the things that people say, what the things that they recall. And what happens when you're hearing it all the time is each person's session comes and goes, and I don't really retain it all. I can recall if they come back and say, do you remember my session? But I would usually have to get my notes out and be like, yes. But I think surprising is always when people are skeptical and they see something that, well, they see, for starters, it happens. They recall a past life. And the other thing is, the surprising factor will be that it associates with what's going on for them now. So, for example, as you said, with the shoulder thing, I'm thinking about a lady who was a psychologist, and she came to learn to do past life therapy, recall therapy, I call it. And she literally was lying on the ground because her back was so bad. And anyway, she had her regression, and she was injured on a battlefield in a past life. And she got up and she was fixed in that course. So it's not like evangelistic, please don't think it's like that, but literally she's got up, and it was so brilliant because she had credentials. She was a psychologist, and unfortunately people believe it more if people have got these credentials, but she got up and she walked and she was fixed then. So it was a 3 or 5 day course and all good. So it was a beautiful example of how physical things can be fixed instantly.
How far back have you heard? What's the oldest life?
Yeah. So when they go back to, let's say, caveman times, so really I have not seen them be monkey-like, or the evolution before we're human. They're scruffy and hairy and beardy, as you would expect, because there's nothing to shave with. But they're human. But having said that, when people come for past life regressions, they do go elsewhere. Sometimes they go to other planets. They do go elsewhere.
Atlantis, I'm assuming, is a big one.
I must say, when they go to places that seem like what we know of Atlantis, they don't always say it's Atlantis. But the way that they describe it is that what we hear many people have said. But the other thing that is surprising to me is when people go there, it seems to them they're like, what was that? So what happens is you get people who they've not read about it, they maybe have never resonated with it, and yet they go to these places. So it's like it's almost like not a question, did it exist, was it there, because they're recalling it and they're as surprised as anyone else that these other places exist. But life on, or I believe that Earth is a school. It's one school that we go to, the hardest one, but certainly there are other places that people or souls incarnate to have an experience. Yeah.
How do you deal with disturbing or traumatic past lives?
Yeah, something happens when someone is recalling their past life. And I must say, I believe this is because the soul is in charge. So there's a detachment there. So very often you can see what's happening. You're looking at what's happening and it can be gruesome. Yet there's a detachment in there and you're seeing it almost from the planned perspective of why it happened. Though having said that, there are times when people literally feel like they're there on that battlefield and they can feel it, right. Feel the pain, sense it. So all we do then is tell them to look at it. Okay, just look at what's going on. You don't need to feel it again. And immediately they'll switch and they'll be looking at what's going on. rather than feeling the sensations. And you know what? That's one of the things that could be different if you do the regression yourself, or you do the recall yourself in a meditation, is you might feel all those things and be like, whoa, that was not pleasant. I guess that's one of the brilliant things about having a facilitator, is if there's any pain like that, it can be removed. But can I say, it doesn't last long. And also people have real big emotional, I'm going to call them outbursts in that space. And it's part of the healing. It's profound. So we don't stop it. We don't want to stop the feelings that arise. They're super important. Yeah.
Now, how does the concept of soul groups or soul mates work within the framework of past lives or reincarnation?
Yeah. So often people in the past lives, when they recall them, they recognize people that they know now or people that they've encountered. So indeed the soul groups, that's a thing. And when people go in between lives, they can visit with their soul group or meet them per se, and recognize the souls of the people that they've either been with now or potentially are going to come across. Mm-hmm. So the soul groups, the soulmates. And I think we all people love. So they want to be all about the soulmates that come and they have the most fabulous, love relationship. And of course, that's a beautiful thing. But our soulmates in our soul group are always as well the people that create the most trouble for us. People don't like it, and they're like, what's he doing in my soul group, or what's she doing here? But it's liberating for them, because it brings awareness to that this thing was agreed and there was a purpose to it. But I think as humans, we're like, why? You can't possibly fathom that someone that you went through such a hard time with could be in your soul group. But I think it also cements that the lives are blueprinted, they're destined, and there's a reason for it. And also, life is not just a merry-go-round. It is, from my 20 years in this, my basic assimilation and why we're here, it is to experience emotion. And almost everything that we do as a person in a body, it invokes emotion in us. Whether we like the touch of that or we don't, there's an emotion involved. So that's what the purpose behind it all is. And these souls that come together with us to invoke emotion and cause trauma and, play a part in our cycle of life. It's just how it is.
I mean, every good story needs a villain.
Yeah.
That's how the hero grows. So without a good villain, there is no growth as the hero. The hero has nothing to battle.
Yeah.
So let me ask you then, do you think that lessons and skills from past lives transfer over? So if you were a great pianist, does that, hey, I really like piano, or you can play piano in this life, but sometimes it's maybe like I have this, I love acoustic guitar. Just love acoustic guitar, but I can't play a lick. But anytime I hear it, it's just like, that's the thing that it just gets me really. I just love that music. So flamenco and all that kind of that music, especially Spaniard music. I love that. Gypsy Kings, that kind of stuff. But I can't play a lick of it. I tried, cannot play a lick of it. But there's a connection with that vibration of the guitar that connects to me. So what would you be your explanation of that, out of curiosity?
Yes, I feel like music would have had to have featured for you in another lifetime. It will have had to have. But also, I think that music is it's absolutely one of the pleasures or treasures of life that our hearing allows us to have. And we can feel it as well in vibration and that. It's just extraordinary. But I think the way that you're talking about how you feel about the guitar music and what it invokes in you and the other styles of music, you'll absolutely have been associated with it before. And with your Spanish, did you say Spain?
Spain, yeah, Spain. Yeah, I love Spaniard.
You were
like
so
flamenco guitar.
Before. It's so exciting. I'd love to regress you. But yeah.
We just met, Toni, and I'm married. But I'm joking. No, it's always interesting because I thought about that. I was like, just because you might have been the greatest guitar player of all time in another life.
Yeah.
But this life, that's not your purpose, so it's not part of your blueprint, but you still have a feeling of it. It's like food. You might have been a great chef, but you might enjoy food at a higher level than other. There's almost like shadows or echoes of past lives. Echoes, I think, is a great word to use.
Beautiful way to say it.
Yeah, it's like echoes of a past life. You would feel it in this life, but not necessarily be, like you might love hearing singing, but you can't sing a lick in this life because it's just not your path. Yeah, me too. Like it's my children always like, stop that, just stop. So let me ask you, what do you think karma plays in all of this in past lives? Have you, from your perspective and your experience, the concept of karma, of that in a past life, and how it, because according to karma, the law of karma, from my understanding of it, is that these are lessons that you need to, it's energy that has to be either repaid or lessons that you want to continue to learn based on something that was done in a former life. What's your experience with karma?
Yeah. So when I first started in this, I was aware of that perspective on karma. But what I've come to discover is that karma is also a human concept. But the way that I like to see our lives is as we are coming for an experience. It's not to pay back. It's not necessarily for a lesson. Of course we learn while we're here. Of course we do. That's the cycle of life insists that we do. We learn as we go. But what we're not doing is coming back and paying for something that we did before. And when we go back, we're not going to be paying for what we did now. It's almost like what goes on earth stays on earth. So
it's Vegas.
Yeah.
It's like Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
That's right. Yeah. But it is like that. And I think all of the beliefs that people have about karma, and they've been bad and they're going to be copying it next time, or they're copying it now because they were bad last time. All of that, I think, comes from fear-based religion that was taught to us from a very long time ago. But the reality is, when we go back, the moment we leave our body, our soul leaves, we are back to peace and harmony, and it's beyond peace and harmony, actually. Those are our human words to try and just describe it. So we return to that ultimate enlightenment or purity. We return to purity. So there is there's no mind to even judge what was good or what was bad. So all of that happens here. So therefore, karma is something for humans to have an experience with. Because again, even when someone's thinking, I'm having a shitty life now because I must have been bad before, that's also part of their experience in this life. But can I tell you now, anyone, if you're thinking you've got bad karma, please do away with that and find out why actually is this going on in your life, because you're not being paid back for a past life.
From what I understand is, from near-death experiences I hear, every single near-death experience I've talked to who's had a life review, they say there's no judgment. Oh. There's no judgment in a life review. So I understand that, and I agree with what you're saying. What I understand karma to be is, as the evolution of the soul, you choose to come back down and deal with certain, like there's like I didn't pass that test. I can't get my diploma unless I do that test. It's your choice if you want to come down or not. It's not forced upon you. And it's kind of like, oh, I want to go down there and I want to, it's not because of something I did before, but I need to go through this lesson, part of my soul blueprint, in order to continue my evolution in this spiritual journey. That's at least from my perspective, from what I've understood, learning along the lines. But I agree with you. I don't believe it's like I hurt somebody here, so I then must be hurt. I think that you choose to come back and maybe have that experience if you want to continue to evolve. Does that make any sense?
I feel like yes. And I feel like what we do is we are to experience all sides of any experience, which means we are going to experience, let's say, being a perpetrator or being abused by a perpetrator, or maybe not even abused, but we must experience
rich or
sides.
Poor, like rich or poor. Sure, yeah. Abandoned and loved,
exactly.
and all, the contrast,
it's
the contrast of everything.
Exactly. So, yeah, and I think karma is really more about, it is cause and effect here. So if you're cranky and you're nasty to people, then people are probably going to be cranky and nasty back to you, for example. And if so cause and effect in that way, it has relevance. But I think when we incarnate, it's to experience all sides of any facet of life. Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, this is a question I get asked all the time. Do all dogs go to heaven? Do animals have karma?
Oh.
Do animals have not karma? Do animals have past lives and go through reincarnation? Do they evolve? This is a question I get constantly. So I'd love to hear from your perspective. What do you think happens to our furry friends?
Okay. I tell you what I haven't seen is people incarnating as animals. I have not seen that.
Yeah.
But people do see their animals, and they might see a life where they've had an animal and they say, oh, that's my dog now. So I think that the animals must come back with people as well. And I suppose if we think about animals, particularly probably dogs and cats, they really have a resonance with their owner. And I think dogs, being man's best friend, are just so unconditional that I do think that they play such an extraordinary part in people's lives. And they do see them. They do see them over there or in other lives as a different dog.
which is interesting, because in some near-death experiences I've spoken to near-deathers, they've had seen their animals on the other side.
Yeah.
And sometimes the animals come to them under, I've spoken to other people about the deathbed sequence of what happens, and the animals show up as someone's dying as well. So these are doctors who have recorded these experiences. But the concept of reincarnation, concept of past lives of animals, I mean, you can't look into an animal's eyes and not, there's something going on. They all have personalities. They all have quirks, and anyone who's ever owned a dog or a cat understands that without question.
And also when I think about it from a self-awareness perspective, and you look into a dog's eyes, it's like they're more aware than us. That's because they're truly, truly unconditional. They're so special, aren't they?
Dogs are unconditional. Cats are definitely not unconditional. Because I have cats. No, I've had dogs and cats. Cats are not. They have a specific energy to them, to say the least.
Yeah.
But there is a love there. Dogs are just happy every time you walk through the door.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I thought you would never come back. Thank you for being here. Every time.
So beautiful.
They are such therapeutic creatures for people in life. Sometimes that's the only friend you have.
Yes.
Is your animal, or the animals there during when you've broken up with your significant other. The animal knows when you're crying. I remember my dog would look at me when I started crying, or I was going through a breakup or something, or was sad. They knew.
Yeah.
It's really fit. That's a whole deep well of rabbit hole that one day, no pun intended, that we will go down. Now, what do you think is the biggest misconception about past lives and reincarnation that people have?
Oh, I think that it would be that everyone's famous and that they go off path. And those are probably the biggest ones, or that other people go off path. They would be the biggest misconceptions. I think also that they're being paid back, or that they couldn't possibly have chosen this. But I totally understand it, because from my observations, until you've had an experience, not just of past lives, it might be a near-death experience, but until you've had some transcendent experience of your own, then it's truly hard to fathom. So I think that there's a lot of misconceptions until it happens to you, or until you experience it.
Fair enough. Now, the big question is, what was your first past life regression like? How did you, and what did it do to you? How did it affect you in your own journey, not as a doctor or as a therapist, but as a soul on this planet?
My first past lives was after I'd read Dr. Brian Weiss's book, and I saw two in that life. I've seen so many, but in that time I had asked for, because you're supposed to, or you're not supposed to, but you can ask for a symptom. So I asked about guilt, because I felt so guilty for leaving my marriage. And I asked about public speaking. I couldn't speak in front of people. And I also went through school covering my writing, because I couldn't bear the thought of someone looking over my shoulder, which I didn't even realize was a phobia until in my 30s. And I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that weird thing going through school. Anyway, so what I recalled from those past lives, oh, sorry, the other thing I asked for was, why, if I'm intuitive, how have I gotten to my mid-30s before I realized this? So they were the questions I asked. And what I saw was, I was a young girl in Scotland in the late 1700s, and I could see that I used to, people would come to the house and hold their hands over mine. And I also could see that I knew what, that's not a good look on the screen, but I knew how to munch up herbs, leaves into poultice. And so people would come to have their wounds healed. So, but I was just a girl. I was 17 when I first saw that, and so many other details in it. And gosh, I've even met people from it now. But what transpired was, I was to be hung in the middle of the village. And because it was witch days. So something happens and the people would turn on you and deem that you're a witch, and in that case I was to be hung. But it's really exciting actually, because I didn't see who did it, but I know when I was on the platform in that very first time that I'd experienced a past life, that someone let me go. And suddenly I'm running up the road and I thought, well, that's weird. How would you be able to get away? But he let me off, this man on there. And I found out why, because I've been back to that lifetime to find out why. Super exciting for me. But anyway, that explained the intuition, and it opened it up. It exploded after that, my intuition. Because I suppose there's this fear of being hung. It's very subconscious, but it was there. And the other thing with the writing and the speaking in front of people, I saw myself as a man. The next life, so we went to do 2 lives. I was a man, and I had very typical, the stockings with the black buckle shoes and the knickerbocker pants on, and the fitted coat. And I was writing with a quill in a big, beautiful book. and I could tell that I was somebody, like somebody of status. I thought I was the mayor of the town that I was in. And what happened was, I must have been able to foresee things, and I wrote them down, but nobody knew. And I could foresee a storm. It wasn't even witchy. I could foresee a storm was coming, and it was going to do a lot of damage to our town. So I called the people to tell them that a storm was coming and we need to take measures. And they turned on me. They were like, well, how would you know that? And they turned on me. So they must have thought I was, crazy, a warlock or something. Of course, I guess it was back a long time ago as well, so witchy days. But yeah, that they locked me up. Actually, I died locked up. So I think that what that unleashed in me was, it's okay to speak up, it's okay to say. So and also they went in and read this big book that I recorded my, I guess, visions in. And they were like, you are nuts, so off you go, we're locking you up. So what happened after that, Alex, was I was just starting out in this work. Well, after that, you couldn't shut me up, because I started to talk at events and things about past lives, because the mission was, back then, I was told, was for it to become mainstream. So I've been talking about it for a long time now, and I would write articles and have them published. So all of my fears in that regard were gone. So the past life worked. And of course, you can't argue with, well, I didn't argue anyway, because the moment that I had that session, I knew that it was real. To me, it was like, no scientist can take this away from me. I know that it was real. So I guess I got a thick skin as well from any pushback that happened. And you know what's, now we're 20 years later, and there's been so much work done by Shirley MacLaine, for example. Imagine, she came out in the thick of when it was not mainstream. Such a big mission for her to do that, and all of the others that did. But now it's pretty mainstream.
People understand and have heard that concept of reincarnation. They've heard the concept of past lives, and it is not as woo-woo as it was once. A lot of people still believe it's woo-woo, but then the past life regressionists, and it gives it legitimacy. Like your work gives it legitimacy. It's not just like, you're at a carnival and you walk into a tent and there's, a lady there going, okay, you were once Marilyn Monroe. Like, it doesn't. This actually puts it to a different light. Well, I'm glad I could help, hopefully shine a light on this and expose this information to a whole lot of people who are curious about it. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests. What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Oh my goodness. For me, living a fulfilled life is finding what resonates with you and working with that, not fighting yourself, and doing things that make you feel good. So whether touch, taste, sound, do those things. I feel like life is such a blessing to enjoy. The aspects of it that are good are really good. So gosh, do what it takes to make you happy, or bring you joy, I suppose, because ultimately contentment's the ultimate space that we can be in most of the time.
Now, if you can go back in time and speak to little Toni, what advice would you give her?
Oh, I would say to myself, be yourself. And I realize that you don't know what that means until you are. But to be yourself is the most powerful thing, I believe, on the planet that we can do for ourselves. And it can take a lot to get to that stage. And part of my journey of self-awareness is coming back to being myself all the time. Or, yeah, so be yourself.
How do you define God?
The collective that we are all part of. Collective energy.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
To experience emotion.
And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
I'm all over social media, and my website is ToniReillyInstitute.com. And if anyone wants to learn past life regression or way beyond that, we've got a whole new psychology from it. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
And do you have any parting messages for the audience?
I would say, try not to worry. Try not to worry and be good to yourself, because when you're good to yourself and you're trying not to worry, you're then good to other people. So don't give up. Don't give up.
Dr. Toni, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate this conversation. Hopefully it's going to help some people
Thanks,
around
Alex.
the world. So I appreciate you, my dear. Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.